Today, we will dive into the new chapter of national differences in political economy. International business operates across diverse countries, each with its own unique political, economic, and legal systems. These differences are not just theoretical, they have real, significant impacts on how businesses function in different parts of the world. Let's start with the term political economy, which refers to the interconnected nature of a country's political, economic, and legal systems. These systems don't exist in isolation, they interact with and influence each other. For example, the political decisions a country makes, such as laws or government policies, can directly affect the economy by shaping how businesses operate, the level of taxation, or trade policies. The legal system then enforces these policies, ensuring businesses and citizens comply with the rules. To give you a concrete example, think of a country like China, where the political system is more centralized and the government plays a significant role in economic decision-making. Here, government policies can direct huge investments into certain industries, such as technology or infrastructure, affecting the country's economic growth. Let's zoom in on one of the key components of political economy. Its political system. A country's political system defines how it is governed. As you can see on this slide, the political system isn't just about laws or policies, it's about the framework through which power is distributed and exercised, both formally and informally. For example, in a democracy, power is typically spread across various institutions, allowing for checks and balances. In contrast, in a dictatorship or military regime, power is often concentrated in the hands of one individual or a small group, making the decision-making process faster but more centralized. Now, let's look at the two key dimensions used to evaluate political systems. The first dimension focuses on the balance between individualism and collectivism, whether a country emphasizes individual freedom or group well-being. The second dimension is the distinction between democracy and totalitarianism, whether a country allows for open participation in government or concentrates power in a single entity. Now that we've introduced the two dimensions, let's begin by looking at collectivism. Collectivism emphasizes the importance of group goals over individual ambitions. This idea can be traced back to the Greek philosopher Plato, who believed that the interests of the collective should always take precedence over individual desires. Building on our understanding of collectivism, today the concept is closely linked with socialism, as advocated by Karl Marx. Marx emphasized state ownership of production, distribution, and exchange as a means to ensure the well-being of society as a whole, rather than benefiting just individual capitalists. In socialist systems, the focus remains on collective progress, aiming to manage resources in a way that serves the greater good. As socialism evolved in the early 20th century, it split into two distinct camps. The first camp is communism, which believes that socialism can only be achieved through violent revolution and the establishment of a totalitarian dictatorship. Communism, as seen in countries like the former Soviet Union, aimed to eliminate class structures entirely. However, by the mid-1990s, communism was in retreat globally as many countries moved away from this model. The second camp is social democracy, which advocates for achieving socialist goals through democratic means, rather than revolution. Social democrats support a blend of free markets and state intervention, with the goal of balancing individual freedom and collective welfare. However, many social democratic policies have also retreated, as countries increasingly embrace privatization and free market economies. Now that we've covered collectivism, let's turn our attention to the opposite concept, individualism. Individualism promotes the idea that each person should have the freedom to pursue their own economic and political interests. This philosophy, which traces back to the Greek philosopher Aristotle, emphasizes personal liberty and self-reliance. For example, in countries like the United States or the United Kingdom, individual rights are highly valued. People are encouraged to pursue personal success, whether that's starting a business, making independent political choices, or focusing on personal achievements. In these societies, the success of the individual is often seen as a reflection of overall societal progress. Continuing with individualism, there are a few key elements that define this concept. Individualism values diversity and believes that private ownership is essential for personal freedom. In these societies, economic and political freedoms are seen as fundamental rights that allow people to make their own choices and pursue personal goals. Individualism typically aligns with democratic political systems and free market economies, where individuals are free to participate in political processes and the economy with minimal government interference. Now, let's move on to democracy, a political system where the government is elected by the people either directly or through representatives. In democratic systems, the population has the power to influence government decisions through voting and participation in the political process. Democracy is often associated with individualism, as it emphasizes the rights and freedoms of individuals to make choices, both politically and economically. Now, let's take a closer look at the two types of democracy. The first is pure democracy, where citizens are directly involved in decision-making. While this idea emphasizes full public participation, it is not commonly practiced today due to the complexities of modern societies. Most modern democracies operate under a system of representative democracy, where citizens elect individuals to make decisions on their behalf. This allows for governance that balances public involvement with the practicalities of running a large-scale nation. The foundation of any democratic system is its constitution, which outlines the fundamental rights and structures that protect individual freedoms and ensure a functioning government. Key elements of a constitution include the right to freedom of expression and a free media, along with regular elections that allow all eligible citizens to vote. Constitutions also ensure limited terms for elected representatives, a non-political bureaucracy, and a non-political police force and military. Lastly, they guarantee free access to state information, fostering transparency and accountability. Now, let's discuss totalitarianism, a form of government where one person or political party holds absolute control over all aspects of life. In totalitarian regimes, opposing political parties are banned, and the government often dictates not just political matters but also social, cultural, and even personal freedoms. This extreme concentration of power is in direct contrast to democratic systems, where power is shared and citizens have a voice in decision-making. Totalitarianism comes in four major forms: communist totalitarianism, where the Communist Party holds absolute control, as seen in countries like North Korea; theocratic totalitarianism, where power is controlled by religious leaders or parties, as seen in countries like Iran; tribal totalitarianism, where a single tribe or ethnic group dominates, often found in certain African states; right-wing totalitarianism, which allows some economic freedom but heavily restricts political freedoms, often seen in fascist regimes. Each of these forms represents a different way that totalitarian control is exerted, but they all share the common trait of centralizing power and limiting individual political freedom. To summarize, political systems can be assessed along two key dimensions. The first is the balance between democracy and totalitarianism, where democracy emphasizes citizen participation and voting, while totalitarianism concentrates power in a single party or individual. The second dimension is the focus on individualism versus collectivism. Individualism stresses personal freedoms and private ownership, while collectivism prioritizes the group's well-being and often involves state ownership of resources. Political ideology and economic systems are closely connected. In countries that emphasize individual goals, you'll typically find market-based economies, where economic activities are driven by personal freedom and private ownership. On the other hand, in countries that prioritize collective goals, state ownership and government control over key industries tend to dominate the economy, as seen in more socialist or communist systems. Understanding this link helps explain how political beliefs shape economic structures.